Hi, and welcome back to GCSE History Lessons. In this lesson, we'll examine the 1956 Hungarian Uprising. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the reasons for and events of the Hungarian Uprising of 1956, and understand the reactions and impact of this event. You will remember from previous lessons that the USSR had influence over Eastern Europe since the last months of World War II, and that despite a non-communist government being elected in Hungary in 1945, a communist politician named Rákosi used Hungary's secret police to execute his political opponents and take control of the country by 1948. To understand the reasons for the revolt in Hungary in 1956, we must first understand the change of leadership in the USSR after Stalin died on March 5, 1953. As we know, Stalin was a brutal and paranoid leader. He often killed or exiled his political opponents, and his use of the secret police made people, even those in his government, afraid to speak against him or his policies. He focused on the industrialization of Russia and the control of Eastern Europe to maintain power. The power struggle after Stalin's death resulted in a new leader, Nikita Khrushchev. Khrushchev was a Russian revolutionary who had worked in the mines, served in the Red Army, and administered Ukraine during World War II. He believed as much in continuing the communist revolution in Russia as Stalin did, but he believed in a smarter approach to achieving Russia's goals. Instead of dominating the economy and relying on heavy industry and the army, Khrushchev wanted to use thermonuclear weapons as Russia's defense, thereby freeing up money and resources to improve living conditions in the USSR, especially by improving agriculture, which had been neglected by Stalin. Unlike Stalin, Khrushchev believed in mutual respect and non-interference in one another's affairs between the USA and USSR. In 1956, he even secretly denounced Stalin and his cult of personality. Therefore, what was happening in the USSR during the 1950s was the process of de-Stalinization, where the USSR and Eastern Europe were freed from the strict control and paranoia they felt under Stalin. But just how far Khrushchev was willing to let Eastern Europe be free from the USSR was not certain. In July 1956, the brutal communist leader of Hungary, Matthias Rákosi, was forced to resign. After a wave of student and worker protests, his former rival, Imre Nagy, was restored to power in October 1956. The country suddenly descended into revolutionary chaos. On October 23rd, the massive bronze statue of Stalin at the front of City Park in Budapest was pulled down and decapitated. Imre Nagy was socialist, not communist, and he brought Hungary back to the way it was immediately after World War II, allowing other political parties to form and 2,100 workers' councils to form and run their own enterprises. Soviet troops withdrew from Hungary on the 1st of November 1956. This encouraged the Hungarians to move further towards independence from the USSR. Nagy proclaimed that Hungary was not aligned to the USSR or the USA, but would develop its nation without joining any power blocs. This was too much for Khrushchev. On November 4, 1956, Soviet tanks entered Budapest and suppressed the revolution over the next week. Around 4,000 Hungarians were killed. Therefore, Khrushchev showed the limits of de-Stalinization. The Hungarian revolt was proof that the USSR saw Eastern Europe as vital to its security, and that attempts to escape from the Soviet sphere would not be tolerated. Around the world, the USSR's brutal crushing of Hungary's revolt had a strong and often negative effect. Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion noted in his diary that the rampage of Soviet tanks through Hungary showed what these communist Nazis are capable of doing. This image of a brutal and intolerant USSR was shared throughout the West. In Eastern Europe, it sent a clear message that revolution would not be tolerated. It was also somewhat of an ideological defeat for Khrushchev, who showed that the Soviet bloc was not an empire by invitation, as NATO was for the USA. So, to summarize what we've learned today, Stalin died on March 5, 1953, and was replaced by Khrushchev, who wanted to relax the rules and control of the USSR on its people and satellite states. The process of removing the control and fear of Stalin's reign was known as Destalinization. Destalinization led some Eastern European countries to reorganize their politics. In Hungary, the brutal communist leader, Matthias Rákosi, was removed in July 1956 and replaced by a socialist, Imre Nagy, in October. Nationalist and anti-Soviet riots broke out across Hungary. The Red Army left Hungary. On November 1st, 1956, Nagy proclaimed that Hungary would be neutral and not support the USA or USSR. On November 4th, 1956, Khrushchev ordered Soviet tanks into Hungary. Over the next week, they killed 4,000 Hungarians and restored Soviet control. The USSR regained control over Hungary and sent a message to Eastern Europe about the limits of Destalinization. The West saw the USSR as a brutal bloc dominating its smaller satellite states. The USSR showed that it needed force to control its satellite states, which damaged its reputation and ideology. It also showed how vital Eastern Europe was to its strategy and defence. This marks the final lesson in Topic 1 of the Edexcel syllabus. Next lesson, we'll recap all the lessons so far and look at some exam questions on the topics we've covered so far. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on GCSE History Lessons.